Attitudes in sport. We need to know about the different parts of an attitude, how attitudes are formed and how that can influence behaviour, and then how we can change attitudes. So there will be the three main kinds of questions. So changing attitudes through the two main techniques, which is cognitive dissonance and persuasive communication. So an attitude is beliefs and feelings about things, objects, people's situation, which makes us behave in a certain way. So those three things are actually antecedents of the three components of an attitude. So the first part of an attitude is cognitive. So we know that cognitive means thinking. So cognitive is to do with knowledge. It's what we know. It's facts. So, for example, that we know that sport is good for us. It keeps us healthy. It keeps us fit. The second part is the affective part of an attitude. So the affective part is around your emotions and feelings. So this is basically whether you either like it or don't like it, enjoy it, don't enjoy it. So it could be that Homer, for example, doesn't enjoy getting off his backside and doing any sport. The last part of an attitude is behavioural. So the behavioural part of your attitude is what you intend to do about it. So this can be two things. It can be actually what I actually do, or it can be what I intend to do. Now, it must be noted that those two things can be different. So I may intend to play 3 times a week, but that might not actually be followed through. Measuring attitudes is much similar to anything else that we've looked at before in psychology. So the three main methods are interview, observation and questionnaire. So we know the advantages and disadvantages of these three methods, much the same for things that we've done before. Just being aware that different questionnaires, some different scales here that that are useful to have some knowledge about. But that would be the three main ways that we'd measure an attitude. So where do our attitudes come from? Now, attitudes is a different kind of a topic because for once we're not going to start to look at the different theories, and we're not looking at theories because basically attitudes are entirely learned. So it's not like that we are born with a certain attitude that's been passed down from our parents through our genes. So attitudes are learned from our socialisation. So some examples of this. Significant others are the main place that we would learn our attitudes. So obviously parents have a massive impact on our attitudes because they shape our behaviour in the early stages of our lives. Once we grow up a little bit, our peers have a big impact on our attitudes. So once we reach our teenage years, into our early years, then our friendship groups can have a massive impact on what we think. In sport, role models are really important. So this is why behaviour of top sports people is so important, because younger people particularly may copy their attitude around certain things. And the media, if you think of things like propaganda and the way that certain media portray things, again in sport, it can be really influential in what the nation thinks in terms of the media. Also, past experience, it's a fairly obvious one, but good positive experiences are going to end up with a positive attitude, and the flip side of that is bad experiences. It's probably going to be that your attitude is not so good towards that thing. Examples of bad attitudes can come from stereotype and prejudice, so it's just worth knowing these as examples of bad attitude. So stereotype is where we expect people to behave in a certain way just because they belong to a certain group. So whether that be disabled people, a certain race in sport, not being able to play a certain sport, or being very good at certain sports, or it might be sort of women, so that the typical underrepresented groups. Prejudice goes a step further. So prejudice is an extreme attitude. It influences our behaviour. So we go a little bit further and actually start to carry out our attitudes here with prejudice. And if we discriminate against people, we're actually we're in sport probably not allowing them to play or not selecting them based on these prejudicial views. So if these attitudes, if bad attitudes are commonplace in sport, then as a coach we need to be able to try to change them. So if our performers are showing bad attitude, how can we change them? We can change them, and there are two main methods. The first one is persuasive communication, and the second one is cognitive dissonance. So you need to be able to know these two methods in enough detail to get good marks on a, let's say, 4-mark question. So the first one, persuasive communication. If we're going to, basically it is what it says it is. So we're going to sit down and try to persuade the person to change their mind. So we're going to sit down and we're going to have a chat. They must be able to, first of all, attend to the message, and then understand, accept and retain it. There are basically 4 main factors though that will go into getting your marks on this question. So 4 things that we need to take into account. The first one's a persuader. So the persuader doing the talking should be trusted, should be respected, hopefully, by the person listening, or should have some expertise. So it could be that we talk about a role model. You know, the actual persuader could talk around a role model having a certain opinion or whatever. This will have obviously a bigger impact and give a better chance of the person wanting to change their mind. Secondly, the message. So the message should be clearly put across, and it can work on 2 sides. It can work on the emotional side of the brain or the logical side of the brain. So it might make them feel bad about their bad attitude, or it can give them some actual reasoning and facts. The next one is the recipient. So the recipient needs to be willing to listen. So all that first bit might be in place, but if the person listening isn't really willing to listen or take the new ideas on board, then you've got no chance. But also the situation can help here. So it might be that if others are present and they are agreeing with the persuader, then the recipient is in a better position to want to change their mind. The second method is cognitive dissonance. To understand this method, we need to know what it means. So again, we know that cognitive is to do with thinking, but what is dissonance? Well, consonance is that we have high correlation between our feelings, and we like this as humans. That's where we need to be. If you think of things like homeostasis in biology, it's a similar sort of thing with the brain. The brain likes to be in a state of consonance where we're in a happy medium, we know where we're at. However, dissonance occurs when there is some sort of conflict between our feelings. This is when we get stressed. So if we have dissonance, it's like we have a conflict between that we might think one thing but also feel another. So this can help us in this instance, and it's important that you understand this, that what we're trying to do is create dissonance where we have difference between different parts of what we're thinking, in order that we do have a better chance of being able to change the person's mind. Because if if we just take the 3 parts of an attitude, if all 3 are in agreement, i.e. consonance, then that person isn't going to change their attitude around that fact. So if we change one part, then it might be that we have a good chance of changing the whole attitude. So the way that we would do this is look to change one of the parts of the triadic model. So the first thing that we would do is that we would could change the cognitive part. So we would give the cognitive part by giving some facts, give them some knowledge that they've never known previously around this thing. Second, we could change the affective part. So as we know, we can make the thing much more enjoyable. We can make them enjoy it and change their emotions towards that thing. And lastly, we can change the behavioural part. Now we know that we change most behaviour in psychology mainly through reinforcement. So it might be that we get them to succeed and give them some reinforcement.